text came through at 8:14 on a Tuesday evening. Don't come to the house until Saturday. The kids have a stomach bug and I don't want you getting sick at your age. I'll let you know when they're better. I stared at that message for a long time, standing in my kitchen in the house I'd lived in for 31 years, the same house where I raised my son, the same house where my wife Carol passed away 6 years ago. My daughter-in-law Diane had been sending me versions of that same message for the better part of a year. Not always about a stomach bug. Sometimes it was head lice. Sometimes it was a school project the kids needed to focus on. Sometimes it was simply, "We're having family time this weekend, Walt. Just us." Just us. As if I wasn't family. I should have waited until Saturday. I should have sat in this quiet house for 4 more days and trusted that my grandchildren were fine, that the woman my son had married 3 years ago was simply protective of her space, that the hollow look in my grandson Tommy's eyes the last time I'd seen him was just a phase, just an 8-year-old boy being an 8-year-old boy. Instead, I drove over Thursday night. I'm 63 years old, retired electrician. I spent 38 years pulling wire through walls and crawling through attics in the Texas heat, and I like to think I know when something is wrong, the way a man knows when a circuit is about to fail, before the smoke, before the spark, before anyone else sees a problem. Something had been wrong for months. Something I couldn't name to my son Marcus when he called from the road, couldn't explain to my sister when she told me I was being too suspicious, couldn't make anyone else understand. My granddaughter Lily had died 4 months earlier, 5 years old. They said she fell from the backyard playset, hit her head on the wooden frame at the bottom. Freak accident. The kind of thing that happens to families, the pediatric ER doctor had told me, his face grave and kind in the way that doctors learn to make their faces. These things happen, Mr. Hayes. I'm so sorry for your family's loss. I didn't believe it. I had held that little girl every Sunday for 5 years. She was careful on that playset. Careful the way a child is careful when she's been taught to be careful, looking before she leaped, always gripping the rails. And the bruising the paramedics had described before, Diane had quietly made sure I stopped being included in those conversations. It wasn't right. It wasn't a fall. But I had no proof. I was just a grandfather who had lost his granddaughter and couldn't accept it. So, when Diane's message came through that Tuesday night, I didn't respond. I just got in my truck. Their house was 12 minutes from mine. A brick ranch on a cul-de-sac, nice neighborhood, the kind of street where people mow their lawns on Saturday mornings and wave at each other from driveways. Marcus had bought it right after the wedding. He drove long-haul freight, gone 2 and 3 weeks at a stretch, which I had always thought was too long to leave 2 small children and a new wife alone. But Marcus was 34 and knew his own mind, and I had learned a long time ago that a father's job changes when his son becomes a man. I pulled onto their street with my headlights off. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. The same instinct that made me go Thursday instead of Saturday. The house was mostly dark. One light in the back, what looked like the kitchen. Diane's car was in the driveway, and next to it a gray sedan I recognized as her cousin Derek's. Derek had been staying with them for 6 months. Just until he gets back on his feet, Diane had told Marcus, and Marcus had agreed because Marcus trusted his wife and was 3 states away when he agreed. I didn't like Derek. That's the honest truth of it. I didn't like the way he looked at the children, not with anything I could point to, just a quality of attention that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I didn't like that he was always there when I came over, and always between me and the kids, always answering questions I had directed at Tommy or Lily, always redirecting, always present. I got out of my truck and stood in the dark for a moment. The neighborhood was quiet. Someone a few houses down had their television on, blue light flickering through a curtain, crickets, nothing else. Then I heard it. A sound from the back of the house. Not from inside, from the backyard. I walked slowly along the side of the house, staying in the shadow of the shrubs Carol had always called my wife's style of leaving her mark on every yard she ever saw. I reached the corner and looked into the backyard. The playset was still there. The one Lily had supposedly fallen from. I had never been able to look at it without my chest tightening. The shed was lit up. It was a small shed, 8 by 10, the kind you buy in kit form from a home improvement store and spend a weekend assembling. Marcus had built it 3 summers ago for lawn equipment. The single window was covered from the inside with what looked like a piece of cardboard, but there was a thin strip of light at the bottom of the door, and from inside that shed, I could hear my grandson crying. I don't remember crossing the yard. I remember being at the shed door. I remember trying the handle and finding it padlocked from the outside. I remember the sound of my own blood in my ears. I went to the side window. The cardboard didn't cover the very bottom edge. I pressed my face to the glass and angled my phone flashlight through the gap. Tommy was sitting on the floor in the corner. 8 years old, my grandson, my son's boy. He was sitting on a piece of old carpet, with his ankle secured to the leg of a metal shelving unit by what looked like a zip tie threaded through a length of rope. He was wearing a t-shirt too thin for October. His face was tear-streaked and he was hugging his knees to his chest. I had to get him out. That's all I could think. Get him out. I am 63 years old, but I grew up in a house where my father believed that boys should know how tools work. I had my pocket knife and I had a flathead screwdriver on my keychain. The padlock was a cheap one, the kind with a shackle that fits through a hasp, and the hasp was screwed into wood that was soft and old. 4 screws. I had that hasp off in less than 3 minutes. The door swung open. Tommy looked up. His eyes went wide. Grandpa, I was across that shed in 2 steps, kneeling in front of him. His ankle was raw where the rope had been. His wrist had what looked like older bruising, yellowish green, fading but there. I got the pocket knife open and started working on the zip tie. They'll hear you. The door. His voice was barely above a whisper. If they hear the door, I already opened it. I kept my voice low. We're going to be quiet and we're going to get you out of here. Are you hurt? I'm okay. He was shaking. The way Tommy said I'm okay told me he had said it so many times it had become automatic, the thing you say to make the adults around you stop asking questions. The zip tie gave way. Can you walk? Yes. My feet are cold. I couldn't reach my shoes. His shoes were on the other side of the shed. I grabbed them, handed them to him. That's when I saw the shelving unit more clearly in the thin light from outside. The metal upright he'd been tied to was scratched. Not accidental scratches, deliberate marks. And next to the scratches, pressed into the metal with something pointed. Small, uneven letters. Lily was here. I stopped. Below those 3 words, a row of marks. Lines scratched in groups, the way children learn to count in kindergarten. I stood there and I counted them. 29 marks. 29 days. My 5-year-old granddaughter had been kept in this shed. She had scratched her name so someone would know. She had counted the days. Grandpa. Tommy's hand found my arm. Grandpa, don't look at that. Please, we have to go. Tommy. My voice didn't sound like my voice. Tommy, what happened to Lily? He started crying. Not the quiet, careful tears from before. Something deeper. Something that had been held in a long time. She didn't fall off the playset. She didn't fall. She got sick down here. She was sick for a long time and she kept asking for you and for Dad, and Diane said she was faking. She said she was doing it for attention, and then one night she just... He stopped, pressed his face against my chest. She just didn't wake up, and they moved her. They put her by the playset and they called 911. I held my grandson, and I felt something happen inside me that I don't have the right words for. Not anger, exactly. Anger is too small a word for it. Who did this to her, buddy? Who put her down here? Diane. He pulled back enough to look at me. And Derek. Derek is worse. He likes it when we're scared. Diane said it was teaching us consequences. She said it was what kids like us needed. Kids like you. She said we cried too much and we talked about Mom too much. His mother was Marcus's first wife. She had passed away from cancer when Tommy was 4 and Lily was 2. She said we had to learn that the past was over. She said we had to learn to be her kids now. I am not a man who cries easily. I cried then. I held my grandson in a dark shed next to the words his sister had scratched into metal, and I cried in a way I hadn't cried since I buried my wife. Then I heard the back door of the house open. "Tommy?" Diane's voice, calling toward the yard. "Tommy, I heard something. Derek, go check the shed." I took out my phone. This was the moment I had to decide. I could call 911 right then. But I had my grandson with me. Derek was about to come through the yard, and I needed to document what I was looking at before anyone could touch it. I made a decision that I have second-guessed 100 times, but I believe was right. I took 12 photographs. The marks on the metal, Lily's name, Tommy's ankle. All of it. 12 photographs in maybe 45 seconds, with my phone's timestamp and location embedded in every one. Then I grabbed Tommy's hand and walked out of that shed. Derek saw me first. He was halfway across the yard, a big man, mid-30s, not someone you'd want to meet in an argument. He stopped when he saw me. Behind him, Diane appeared in the doorway, the kitchen light making a silhouette of her. Walt. Her voice shifted through something I can only describe as a very fast calculation. "What are you doing here?" "I told you." "I know what you told me. How did you get into the shed? That's private property. You're trespassing. I can call the police." "Please call them." I had Tommy behind me, his hand holding the back of my jacket. "Please call them right now. Show them what's in that shed. Show them what's written on that shelving unit." I saw it in her face then. Just for a second, the mask slipped. Derek took a step toward me. "You need to leave, old man. Leave the boy and go home. I have been 63 years old for 5 months. Before that, I was 62, and before that, a whole life of being the kind of man who learns to stand his ground because the alternative is living with having looked away." I looked at Derek and I said, "Take one more step and I will put you on the ground. I'm telling you that as plainly as I know how." Something in my voice or my face or the 38 years of physical work visible in my hands convinced him. He stopped. Diane tried a different approach. Her voice went soft, conciliatory. "Walt, I know this looks bad, but Tommy has behavioral problems. Real ones. Marcus knows about them. We've been working with a therapist. The shed is a de-escalation space. It's a technique that—" My granddaughter scratched her name in that shed. I said it quietly. She counted 29 days on the wall. She was 5 years old. The silence that followed that was a particular kind of silence. "Nobody is going to believe a dead child over me." Diane's voice had gone flat, the softness stripped away. "I have documentation. Therapists, school records. Derek is a witness. You're a grieving grandfather who can't accept an accident. That's all you are. We'll see." I turned my back on her, which was the hardest thing I'd ever done, and I walked Tommy through the side gate and out to my truck. I put him in the passenger seat and I locked the doors and I called 911. The police arrived at 2247 Creekside Drive at 9:52 p.m. I was in my truck around the corner with Tommy, who had fallen asleep against my shoulder the way children fall asleep when their body finally registers safety before the mind fully catches up. Detective Sandra Ruiz was the one who found me. 40-something, dark hair pulled back, the kind of eyes that have learned to take in a lot without reacting visibly. She knocked on my window and I rolled it down. "Mr. Hayes? That's me. I've been in the shed." She paused. "Hayes, I've been in the shed." Those 4 words told me everything I needed to know about whether she understood what she was looking at. "My granddaughter," I said. "Lily Hayes. She died 4 months ago. They said she fell from the playset. I pulled the file in the car on the way here." She said it carefully. "We'd like to talk about reopening that case. She was sick." Tommy's voice, barely awake, from my shoulder. "She was sick for a long time down there, and they said she was faking." Detective Ruiz looked at my grandson, and I could see her doing the thing that good investigators do, the thing that separates the ones who care from the ones who don't. She was listening not just to the words, but to everything underneath them. "Tommy," she said gently, "we're going to get you somewhere warm. And when you're ready, we're going to want to hear everything you remember." Only when you're ready. You're safe now. Diane and Derek were arrested that night. Derek for aggravated assault and unlawful restraint. Diane for the same charges, plus child endangerment. The murder charges came later. Let me tell you who I was before that Thursday night, because you need to understand how long this had been building. My name is Walter Raymond Hayes. I was born in 1,962 inches, Beaumont, Texas. My father was a union electrician, and so I became one too. The way sons often follow the path that's been cleared in front of them, not from lack of imagination, but from a deep respect for honest work. I married Carol Simmons in 1987. She was a school teacher. We built a life the way you build a house, one thing at a time, each piece solid before you put the next one on top. Our son Marcus was born in 1990. He was a good boy who became a complicated young man who became a decent adult, which is about the best any parent can hope for. He married his first wife, Jenny, in 2016. Jenny had a laugh that could fill a room. She got her diagnosis in 2019, and she fought it with everything she had. And she passed away in 2021, leaving Marcus with Tommy, who was 4, and Lily, who had just turned 2. Those were dark years. My Carol had passed in 2018, so it was Marcus and me holding each other up, 2 men who had lost the women who were the centers of their lives, trying to be enough for 2 little kids who needed more than we knew how to give. I drove over every day. I learned to braid Lily's hair tolerably, if not well. Tommy and I built a birdhouse in my garage. We got through it the way families get through things, imperfectly and together. Then Marcus met Diane. She was 31, a legal assistant, organized and capable and attentive in a way that looked, at first, like exactly what the children needed. Marcus was lonely and grieving, and she was there, and certain. And certainty is seductive when you've been lost. They married 14 months after they met. I walked Marcus down the aisle because he wanted me there, and I smiled in every photograph because that is what fathers do. The changes came slowly, the way most bad things come, slowly enough that each one seemed like it might be nothing. Diane started managing the kids' schedule, not unusual for a new stepmother finding her footing. But she managed it in a way that gradually reduced my time with them. Tuesday dinners became every other Tuesday. Sunday visits moved to Sunday afternoon, and then Sunday afternoon only if the kids didn't have activities. I tried to raise it with Marcus, and he said she was just trying to establish routines, that routines were good for kids who had experienced loss, that I needed to give her time. I gave her time. I noticed that Tommy stopped talking about his mother. Not the natural way that grief softens over years, but abruptly, the way a subject gets closed. When I asked him about Jenny, he looked over his shoulder before he answered. He stopped answering after a while. He just shrugged and changed the subject, and I could see the effort it took. I noticed that Lily, who had always run to me at the door, started hanging back, started watching Diane's face when I came in, checking something, calibrating something, and then either coming forward or staying put based on whatever she saw there. I noticed Derek arrived and was suddenly a permanent feature of the house in a way that Diane presented as temporary and Marcus accepted as temporary, and I found deeply wrong in a way I could not articulate. I brought my concerns to Marcus twice. Both times he said I was having trouble accepting that he'd moved on, that Diane wasn't trying to replace Carol or Jenny. She was building something new, and I needed to respect that. I didn't know how to say what I meant without sounding like a bitter old man who wanted his son to stay in grief. So I said less than I should have and watched more than I should have had to watch. And then Lily died, December 7th. I got the call from Marcus, who was somewhere in New Mexico, when his phone rang. He turned around and drove 36 hours straight and arrived looking like a man who had been hollowed out by the drive. The official story was simple and devastating. Lily had been playing on the playset after school, lost her footing, struck her head on the crossbar at the bottom of the slide. She was unconscious when Diane found her. She never regained consciousness. I asked to see the ER report. Diane said it was a private medical matter. I asked the investigating officer if there was any sign of prior injury. He told me the case had been reviewed and closed as accidental. I asked Marcus to push for more answers, and I saw the look on his face, the look of a man trying to survive his second enormous loss, and I understood that I was asking him to do something he might not be able to survive, so I carried it alone. For 4 months, I carried the certainty that something was wrong and the inability to prove it, until Diane sent me a message on a Tuesday night telling me not to come until Saturday. The medical examiner who reviewed Lily's case the second time was a forensic pathologist from Houston named Dr. William Chen. He was thorough in the way that specialists are thorough when they know the first examination missed something. He took 6 days. His findings were not consistent with a fall from a playset. Lily had bruising in patterns inconsistent with a single traumatic event, older injuries that had been healing. She showed signs of prolonged exposure to cold. She had early-stage pneumonia that had gone untreated. The injury that killed her, blunt force trauma to the base of her skull, was consistent with a blow, not a fall. My granddaughter had been sick in that shed for weeks. When she was too sick to be hidden anymore, they had made it look like an accident. When Detective Ruiz told me the findings, I was sitting in this kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd read Diane's text 4 weeks earlier. I held the phone to my ear, and I listened, and I said nothing for a long time after she finished. "Mr. Hayes, we're upgrading the charges. Both of them. First-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, felony child endangerment." She counted 29 days, I said. Lily counted 29 days on that shelf. "I know." Detective Ruiz's voice was careful. "She also did something else. We almost missed it. There's a low shelf at the back of the unit. Lily scratched something on the underside of it where you wouldn't see unless you looked directly up from the floor." "What did she scratch?" "A heart, and underneath it the letter D. We believe it stands for Daddy." I had to put the phone down for a minute. My 5-year-old granddaughter, sick and scared and alone in a shed in October, had scratched a heart for her father on the underside of a shelf where she lay. She had held on to something even in that darkness. The trial took place the following spring. I attended every session. Marcus came home from the road for good, took a local driving job that kept him within 2 hours of Tommy, and sat beside me in that courtroom every day. Father and son. The two of us in the front row where Diane had to see us every time she looked up. The prosecution's case was meticulous. The photographs I'd taken in the shed were entered into evidence, the timestamps establishing they were captured before law enforcement arrived, which addressed any question of tampering. Tommy's recorded testimony, given in a pediatric interview room with a child trauma specialist, took 40 minutes and was heard in complete silence by every person in that courtroom. My grandson was 9 years old when he gave that testimony. He described, in the careful specific language of a child who has processed something incomprehensible through the filter of a child's mind, what had happened in that shed over the course of a year. The first time Diane put him in there. The first time Derek joined her. What they were told they had done wrong, which was ordinary childhood behavior, spilling things, forgetting to flush, crying for their mother, asking to call their grandfather. What happened when they cried too much or asked too many questions? What happened to Lily when she got sick? Diane's attorney tried the approach I had expected. She framed Diane as having been manipulated by Derek, as someone who had lost her own way trying to manage 2 traumatized children with behavioral issues, who had made desperate choices under Derek's influence. She presented documentation, therapist notes, school records that painted Tommy as a difficult child with attachment problems. The jury was not persuaded. 4 hours and 20 minutes of deliberation. Diane Hayes, guilty on all counts, sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Derek Holt, guilty on all counts including first-degree murder, sentenced to life with a minimum of 40 years. Neither of them will be free again. It's not justice in any complete sense because there is no complete justice for what was done to Lily, for the 29 days she counted in the dark, for the heart she scratched for her daddy on the underside of a shelf. But it is the justice that exists, and I will accept it. Almost 2 years have passed since that Thursday night. Tommy is 10 now, 5th grade, living with me in the house where I raised his father. Marcus is nearby, a 15-minute drive, and he comes for dinner 4 nights a week, and we split the other 3. We are both careful with Tommy in the particular way of people who know what it means when someone is not careful. His therapist, a woman named Dr. Patricia Odom, who has the gift of making children feel that their worst experiences do not make them strange or broken, has worked with him every week since the arrest. He has nightmares. He has days when he doesn't want to get out of bed, when the weight of what he carries is too much for a 10-year-old body to hold upright. He also has a best friend named Cole who lives 2 streets over and who comes over on weekends to play video games and eat everything in my refrigerator. He plays Little League. He is not a remarkable player, but he is an enthusiastic one, and I have not missed a single game. Last month, he laughed at something on television, a deep, helpless, full-body laugh, the kind that rolls out of you before you can stop it. I was in the kitchen and I heard it, and I had to hold on to the counter for a second because it had been so long since I had heard that sound from him. My grandson is not broken. He is bending back toward the light the way plants bend toward windows. We visit Lily's grave every Sunday without fail. I had her moved after the trial, away from the cemetery where Diane's family had chosen a plot, to a small garden cemetery 3 miles from my house, under a pecan tree that turns gold in October. Her headstone is simple. Lily Carol Hayes, 2019 to 2024. Daddy's girl. Papa's sunshine. Forever loved. Tommy talks to her. He tells her about his baseball games and his grades and what Cole said at school that week. Sometimes he asks her questions. Did it hurt? Are you okay now? He never waits for the answers out loud, but I think he hears them somewhere in himself. Sometimes he just sits with his hand on the stone and looks at the pecan tree, and I sit beside him, and we are quiet together. He asked me something 2 weeks ago on the drive home from one of those Sunday visits. Papa, do you think she knew that you'd come? I kept my eyes on the road. What do you mean, buddy? She scratched her name in there. She counted the days. She scratched that hard. He was looking out the side window. I used to tell her you'd find us. Whenever she got scared, I told her Papa would figure it out. That you'd come. He paused. Do you think that's why she did it? So, you'd have proof when you got there? I thought about my granddaughter, 5 years old, scratching her name into metal with something sharp she'd found on a shelf, scratching her days, scratching a heart for her father on a surface where no one would see it unless they were lying where she had lain. Yeah, buddy, I said. I think that's exactly why she did it. I think she knew. So she saved me. Not a question. A conclusion he had arrived at in his own time, in his own way. Even at the end. She was still saving me. I couldn't speak for a moment. I reached over and put my hand on his shoulder, and I kept it there until we pulled into the driveway. There are things I live with now that I didn't know how to live with at first. I live with the knowledge that I missed it. That the signs were there, that my gut was telling me something for months before that Thursday night, and I softened my response because I didn't want to seem like the difficult grandfather, the man who couldn't accept his son's new family. I am 63 years old, and I have spent most of my life being reasonable, and I nearly lost my grandson to my own reasonableness. I live with the 29 marks on that shelving unit. I live with the image of Lily counting her days the way I used to teach Tommy to count with his fingers when he was small. I live with the heart she scratched for Marcus, alone in the dark, still loving her father even in that. I will live with these things for the rest of my life. I don't think I should stop living with them. I think they are the things that keep me paying attention. What I want to say to you, if you are a grandparent or a parent or an aunt or an uncle or anyone who loves a child from a distance, is this. Your instincts are real. The feeling that something is wrong even when you can't point to a single concrete piece of evidence, that feeling is data. Don't dismiss it to preserve the peace. Don't soften your concern because you don't want to make things difficult. Difficult is survivable. What happened to Lily is not. If a child seems quieter than they used to be, ask why. If they flinch when someone's name comes up in conversation, pay attention. If they seem to be managing your emotions, choosing their words carefully around you, adjusting their behavior based on who is in the room, something is wrong. Children don't learn that kind of caution on their own. They learn it because they've been taught that certain truths have consequences. If someone in a child's life is systematically limiting your access to that child, and the explanations keep changing, trust what your body is telling you. Stomach bugs, school projects, family time. The reasons will always sound reasonable in isolation, but take the pattern seriously. And if you are a grandparent who has been told you are overstepping, who has been made to feel that your concern is interference, who has been managed and sidelined and gradually frozen out while you kept trying to believe it was all fine, you are not wrong. Your love for that child is a form of protection. Don't let anyone convince you that standing back is the same as trusting them. I almost waited until Saturday. I almost convinced myself that Diane's text was reasonable, that I was being paranoid, that 63-year-old men should not go showing up unannounced at their daughter-in-law's house on a Thursday night. I went Thursday night. And my grandson is alive. Tommy is out in the yard right now. I can see him through the kitchen window, throwing a baseball against the pitchback net Marcus set up last summer. He's been working on his curveball for 3 weeks. He is focused and serious about it in the way that 10-year-old boys are serious about the things they love, entirely present, entirely in his body, entirely here. My grandson is alive. He is healing. He is here. And somewhere under a pecan tree that turns gold in October, his sister's name is written in stone. She was here too. She counted her days, and she scratched her name, and she left her heart for her father in the dark, and because she did, because she was braver at 5 years old than most people ever have to be, her brother got out. Lily was here. She will always be here. If this story reached you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. A grandparent who feels pushed to the edges of their grandchildren's lives. A parent with a feeling they can't explain. A teacher who sees something in a child's eyes that doesn't add up. Sometimes the only thing standing between a child and what's being done to them in the dark is one adult who decides not to look away. Be that adult. I was almost not that adult. And I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that I went on a Thursday.